Welcome back to the Priestess of Motherhood podcast. My name's Dania Foster, and in this podcast, we are weaving evidence-based science with a deep knowing of the mother's intuition. So that's what it means to be the priestess in your motherhood, is to be able to lead your families into true holistic health from your intuition, as well as an education behind you of deep physiological functionality. So today we want to talk about the histamine in kids. And I want to start with this. When you hear the word histamine, you probably think like runny noses, itchy eyes, that hay fever, sneezing presentation, right? I know that when I was beginning my journey, that's what I was putting histamine with. And it's triggering all of those things. But histamine can be behind a lot more of the other random types of symptoms that we are seeing in our kids, whether that could be the weird patchy rashes that your kids get from after the shower, restless sleep patterns, anxiety, meltdowns, even picky eating can all come back to a histamine pathway. So I will share throughout my own journey. When my kids were little, my eldest had a lot of those patchy red rashes reacting to bath water. We went through all of these different products, trying to see which ones she would react to, which ones weren't. Even the clean products, even the recommended products, we were having some issues with. And the doctor's answers were they're just eczema flares. These things are normal. Um, some of the creams worked, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper going on, because we could pair that with meltdowns, anxiety, gut issues, and sleep disturbance. So, putting all of these things together, we started to see some patterns unfolding. And, you know, it was just screaming at me to look a bit deeper. And this is really what my daughter's health issues when she was a baby is really what prompted me to go back to naturopathy. I had begun it many years before, 7 years before I had started my degree, but I'd pop it on pause, and I had to really go back into that to uncover all of these things. I knew that there were answers out there, and I knew that this was all connected, and I had to dig a bit deeper. Because when you're going to the doctors and they're saying blood tests are fine, or they're saying that your allergy panel's coming up, there's nothing, no allergies there, allergy testing negative, blood work normal. I talked to lots of mums who are in this same position, saying all of the test results are fine, but I don't know what's going on. And they're so confused and they're frustrated by the system because they're not getting any answers. But they're really struggling with all of these symptoms all coming together. So here's the part that often gets overlooked. So histamine isn't just an allergy chemical. It's actually a messenger, and it speaks through your child's brain, their gut, their immune system, and their skin. And it is that messenger that we need to be able to listen to as the symptoms waving that red flag. So histamine is really useful in our body. We need it, but we have a bit of a like a bucket or a highway of histamine, and it can get full. And people's buckets are different sizes. Everybody's different. So our tolerance for histamine can be different. So some people's buckets are smaller than others. So they're going to get overloaded with histamine faster than other people. And in those sort of cases, we have our oversensitive or highly sensitive kids. They probably have a smaller histamine bucket, and we find they're really reacting to lots of things. Their histamine bucket is smaller. Everybody has their own bucket, and when that bucket overflows, or there's this traffic jam of histamine, it's not cleared properly, it builds up, it gets too high. It doesn't just cause the sneezing and the runny eyes and the runny nose that you get when you like put together the hay fever picture, but you can see the flushing. You might see it on like the chest, around the ears, that type of thing. It could be reactions to soap, shampoos, tap water, um, grasses, everything like that. Gut issues are really common. You might see a rise in reflux, the burning, indigestion, tummy aches, diarrhea, constipation, just feeling that nausea. And you're thinking, are you just anxious, like what's going on? Why you always got a tummy ache? Um, but it could be just like that bucket is overflowing. So, yeah, it does lead to things that are happening in the brain as well, like anxiety, hyperactivity, or sensory overwhelm. So, this is why I'm saying that it's a lot more common in our highly sensitive kids when we see them reacting with anxiety or hyperactivity, sensory overwhelm. They're feeling like their clothes are uncomfortable, they can't deal with noises or different things and lights, and all of these things going on. Their senses are overwhelmed. We also have a picture of the restless sleep, night terrors, bedwetting, all of these things we can link back to a histamine intolerance. Suddenly, all of these weird, mysterious symptoms that have never fit into the neat boxes that doctors are looking for, it starts to make sense. So, when you take your child to a doctor and you're talking about having some issues or reactivity, you might use that word, they're going to run an allergy panel. So a basic allergy panel, doing some standard blood work. But histamine isn't just about the IgE allergies, which are picked up there. It's about how the body makes, stores, and clears your histamine levels. So the missing link is often living in your gut health. So different strains of bacteria can actually even produce histamine, like Klebsiella. So I can see this a lot in a lot of my clients that I would run a microbiome analysis on. They've got eczema, they've got reactivity, they've got anxiety. We run a test and they've got high Klebsiella. It's producing histamine. We need to rebalance that microbiome in the gut and reduce that strain of Klebsiella to reduce the production of histamine that's happening in the gut. We can talk about the enzymes in the gut that clear histamine. So DAO is the main enzyme that can clear histamine. And sometimes in some people that's low. Sometimes the enzyme function doesn't have all of the building blocks that it needs to create that enzyme. And it can build that traffic jam where the clearance isn't happening fast enough, and then the bucket is overflowing into reactivity. So things like genetics, the methylation cycle, all of these things can have an impact on the size of that bucket. And that is something that we need to look at as a holistic picture of what's happening here and how can we utilize and optimize the way that these methylation pathways are working, give it some support, some assistance. And this is where nutrients come in board. So making sure that you've got enough zinc, magnesium, vitamin C, B6, all of these types of building blocks that are the cofactors of things like your methylation cycles and different chemical reactions that are requiring these types of nutrients to keep the ball rolling, to keep uh, the flush of histamine from the system, help it clear. All of these things are needed. And yes, those are really common nutrients for lots of different things. They are also used a lot in high stress situations. So if we have a highly sensitive child and you're noticing that they're feeling really stressed, and maybe they get into a bit of a cycle where their stress creates more of that histamine reaction, or they get more of a histamine reaction when they're stressed, it's because they're feeding into each other. And stress, the adrenals, they're going to be burning through those nutrients as well because they're also needed for those types of reactions. So we need to keep those sources full, whether it's food or looking at a supplement to support them if they're in a highly stressed situation or constitution, to help them build up the resilience to be able to manage it on their own. So the nervous system itself is really paramount. It is really important to help build up resilience of the nervous system, of the adrenals, and also support mast cells that are going to overreact when the body is stuck in fight or flight. So our immune system gets switched on when our body is switched on into high alert mode, and everything is going to be on high reactivity stations. So this is where the priestess work comes in, is that we don't just want to silence your symptoms or your kids' symptoms. The priestess in your motherhood is about a calm, grounded presence. And she is able to watch and monitor all of these symptoms and lean into an educated stance or knowing of what's going on. There's something deeper, and how is this all connecting? And we're not doing that from a place of panic, and we're not doing that from a place of hysteria, of course not. But we are coming at this from like research, grounded wisdom, and this is really anchoring into like that solar plexus energy of the priestess of personal power. It's anchoring you back into that knowing of, everything is going to be okay. I'm going to be able to work this out and everything is figure outable. So we are able to connect the dots when we're in that grounded presence, and we're able to think things through logically, but also nurturing. So we connect the dots between what's happening in the skin, the patching, the eczema, the weird skin stuff, the gut. So any reactivity in the gut, the funny tummies, the irregular stool patterns, the mood, not being triggered by our kids' mood themselves, but being in that presence of grounded energy to be like, something's not fitting right here. There's something going on underneath the surface. We don't just label it as my kid's being a bit of a shit lately, or my kid's being really naughty, things are going wrong. But we think there's something triggering this body to feel reactive. What's happening? We look at their sleep. We look at their behavior. We can work with things like herbal medicine to soothe the mast cells, to soothe the immune system, to build the resilience within the immune system with things like nutrients. We work with foods to nourish the histamine pathways. This is an important note as well, is a lot of really healthy foods can be really high in histamine. So fermented foods like your sauerkraut, your kimchi, really high in histamines. Bone broth, high in histamine. So you may be feeling like, I'm trying to do all the right things. My kids eats really healthy. Strawberries, tomatoes, bananas, avocados, really high in histamine. So if you're putting all of those into the one day, you're filling that bucket up in the one day, and you might get a reaction. Okay, so you're thinking everything that I'm giving them, whole foods, it's so healthy. Why isn't this working? And we don't want to remove those foods for forever. That's never my goal when it comes to working with food as medicine. But when we may have to remove some things like high histamine foods, the goal for me is always to take them out of the diet, give the gut a chance to heal, rebuild the microbiome, restore the integrity of the gut wall so we don't have any gaps within the cells, no leaky gut. We're really soothing the gut mucosa. We're building up the resilience of that. We're restoring the histamine pathways of clearance through the enzyme activity, through the liver, through regular bowel motions. And then we start to add these foods back in and see how the body is responding to them. We want a body that responds, not reacts. We want rituals that calm the nervous system, that can help to lead that body to take care of itself, not get stuck in cycles of reactivity. Most importantly, we need to honor the mother's intuition, your intuition. I want to trust what you are witnessing within your children. I want to trust your stories and what you are seeing happening, and be able to tell you that, okay, I hear you, that you are seeing things happening with your kid that doesn't sit right with you, and we can investigate this and find the roots for what's happening here. So if your child is having meltdowns out of the blue, if you are seeing new skin phenomenons that are like, you're getting passed off as it's just eczema, they'll grow out of it, but you're thinking, this is something deeper. I hear you. I want to have a look at that with you. I want to go deeper with you. So that voice within you that's niggling at you to look a bit deeper, to think there's something else going on here. It's not wrong. It's guiding you to have a look back at the root cause. So if you are nodding along to this conversation and thinking, oh my God, this is my child, what is happening here? I invite you to come a bit closer, dive into some support. So I have a free mini series that I have launched. It's called Wild Hearts, Nourished Roots. It unpacks how these symptoms working with your gut health. It is going to talk to you about all of the different markers that we look for in testing. It is going to talk to you about all the different ways that we can help to support that through recipes. I give you a PDF recipe book that you can download and start implementing these things in the kitchen, because people that I've just had conversations with have found so much relief in just implementing these recipes to start off with. Some of them aren't as as necessary if you have high histamine, but I talk about that. You know, if you're in a high histamine state, then we don't want to go into the fermented foods straight off the bat. They may be good for down the track, but you can definitely start with things like a short cooked meat stock, which is in the recipe book, instead of a bone broth, because it's not high histamine. All right, so building in the regulation of the nervous system is so important as well, with beautiful rituals and rhythms that support your family values. I talk about that in that mini series as well. This is something that I really am passionate about, building rituals and rhythms that are valuable for your family's life. So we talk about your life, your rhythms, what's happening in your life, and what you want to build into strengthen your family. And we build these things with you one-on-one. So if you want to dive deeper into that type of support, your child's unique case, the type of pathology that I would look for with doing histamine support, looking at things like homocysteine levels, looking at things like your whole blood count, all of these different things to see what is happening with your child, then I would invite you to step into a consult with me. You can book a free connection call to ask me your questions, tell me about what's happening in your family, and we can dive into that. Or you can book an initial consult for either yourself or your child, and we can support you through that. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Priestess of Motherhood podcast. Remember to share this episode with a friend if you know somebody who may be struggling with something that this may help them with. Share this, jump onto my socials, ask me questions, or send me a DM. Let me know what's going on for you. I will see you next time. Until then, may you be nourished. Lots of love. Bye.